good morning and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folang. Now, we touched on this subject last week, but I think we're going to be revisiting it today. I'm talking about that 17th of March announcement by the federal government that the Federal Executive Council had actually approved $1.5 billion for the fixing, shall we say, of the Port Harcourt Refinery. Well, first of all, to get that off, my guest is Mr. Ladotun Mabinori, economic analyst. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Indeed, our pleasure. And we also have with us to, look at this question, Mr. Peter Esele. Well, I should be saying comrade, actually, but whichever way, he's a friend of the house, former president of Pengasin. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Fola.
Good morning. Well, this is Yori here. Thank you very much for making time for us. Okay.
You're welcome.
Okay, then. Now, to get into it, actually, that refinery that the federal government has locked eyes with, so to speak, and is going to be fixing at what sounds like an astounding sum of $1.5 billion US. It actually has a capacity for 210,000 barrels per day. But it hasn't produced anything in the Lord knows how long. So to now come on and say that we need to repair that, we ask the question that how much does a brand new refinery cost? But not to even look at that particular question. Maybe there are some things that we don't know. I mean, we're talking about the Federal Executive Council here. It's the council of, eggheads, or at least the advisors should be eggheads. So for them to come up with a number like that, but ever since they announced it, people have been talking. It can only be, I think, because people don't understand it, don't understand the logic, don't see how this is going to be done. And that it's been done before with no results. Well, now, this time, it appears the authorities are saying that we have a different set of parameters in place. So this won't go the way of the previous government's failures, plural failures, on this particular matter. How much of that, how much slack are you willing to cut them? That maybe there's a lot that we don't know yet that makes sense about this.
All right. As an economist, I would say at this moment, this is not time to engage on this type of gigantic project, so to speak. I call it gigantic project because not because of the amount, but because of the cost-benefit analysis. Yes. We do that, look at the benefit and look at the cost.
And other circumstances in our economy.
And current circumstances. This is a time where we are going through what they call jobless growth. Fine, we're out of recession, but unemployment just increased recently from 27.1 to 33.33. So when unemployment is growing and economy is growing, that's what they call jobless growth. Because people are losing job, but the economy is growing. I mean, there are other factors accounting for...
Is inflation relevant?
Then I'm also coming to that. So of course, even the growth could also be what they call inflationary trend. That's as a result of rising price of goods and services that we have this growth. So it's not yet uhuru. So it's that same moment that government is now planning to spend $1.5 billion in revamping a moribund refinery. For me, it is a white elephant project. Since 1999 to date, federal government under different administration has spent over $25 billion on these 4 refineries, and yet nothing can be pointed at that this is what they have done. So it becomes a more of lack of trust on the part of government. A case where the citizens don't even trust their government in terms of their policies. That's what is happening right now. Nobody, and again, these are now holding information. We have freedom information bill being passed, so to speak. Okay. So yes, we don't have details of how this 1.5 billion will be spent. And again, if you also look at when the Minister of State for Petroleum was trying to defend it, simply, he was saying that it will be in 3 phases. Yes. The first phase will be the first 18 months.
Yes.
The next one will be then the next one will be next 44 months. That's over 4 years. This is which is to a very large extent spanning over the lifespan of this administration. In the next 3 years, this administration will be over, and you are planning a project of 5. Fine, government should be in continuum, but it should be in continuum. You hand over to the next one. But are we sure that when the next government comes in, the $1.5 billion will not disappear? So at this moment, we don't need this type of prodigality.
And I think topmost on your mind, I'm guessing now personally, is that this whole element of trust
that is the main thing.
Between the polity and the governance.
Yes, sir.
You're not too optimistic that
a great breakdown. Not again, coupled with the fact again that 2023 is almost here. Election is about to start. So people are adding figures together. That, okay, they need money for election. Are they trying to and next this morning set aside for election in 2023? So many misinformation and miscalculations are out there,
and conspiracy theories.
Conspiracy theories.
Mr. Peter Esele, well, I keep on saying Mr. Comrade Peter Esele, what do you think about it? You heard the matter, 1.5 billion. Well, as a Labour person yourself, what are your thoughts about this whole matter? Because the government's perspective is that there's a clear case for winning this time around, and that they won't be going, as it were, stepping into the puddles of previous governments. From having viewed the whole thing, what do you think, Peter?
I think first thing is the issue of trust. There is a lack of trust from the Nigerian people about what government is doing. And then secondly, the government is doing whatever they are doing is shrouded in secrecy. And you are looking at how transparent was the bidding process when they made public. So those are the areas where people have challenges. Well, for me, the other aspect where I am a little bit comfortable is that the money is not going to be paid by the state. It's going to be sourced from international financial institutions. Mm-hmm. And one thing those guys are good at is that they will follow the money, and they will also follow the contractor, and they will pay according to milestone. So that it will overlap the tenure of this current administration. Yes, will it survive after that? If based on the loans that they are sourcing, there's a potential that they might get it right this time.
Okay.
Now, the issue of timing also come in, which of course the economist alluded to at the studio, is that people feel close to election, this is also possible. I think to do what they are going to do in that refinery, because from my own investigation, is that people who were interested in buying the refinery were virtually bidding at a very, very low price. So that was why the government decided that, okay, why don't we just fix it? And then after fixing, we'll decide whether to privatize or not to privatize. So that also contributed to why the government is doing what they're doing. On the issue of, yes, it will take about 4 years. It's going to be about between 44 to 48 months for the whole thing to be concluded. There are some equipment in that refineries, because it's in a very, very bad state now, that are no longer available. And for you to build those equipment, it will take you a minimum of 24 months, coupled with the pandemic situations that we find ourselves. But all in all, I would rather see the glass as half full rather than half empty.
Okay, okay. That's one way to look at it. It could well be, because you see, we don't have all the information, shall I say, in the up and down Tombo bars. Forgive my, because that's where a lot of the criticism is coming from. And this can only be because they don't know. But as Peter just said there, allowing for the fact that we don't have all the information that we might need. But how about, did I hear right when I heard that part of the agreement for getting funds for this is that when the job is done, it will not be government run. It will be handed over to it has to be handed over to the private sector to run this affair. Does that give cause for cheer?
Well, if you look at it from that angle, in terms of commercialization and in terms of economic implication of it, then we can say government got it right in that instance. But the problem we should have is, remember that in 2006, when the Obasanjo administration was about to leave, they sold, in fact, they made bids to sell off all the the 4 refineries. But what happened when the administration came into existence? The same party, the same godfather and godson, reversed the whole sale process. So if we are looking at it from this angle, that okay, when the whole revitalization is done or revamping is done, it will be handed over to private entities to run. Are we sure that the next government, even if it is from the same party, coming in will not come and then upturn the agreement? So there is a lot of distrust in the economy, in the air. So when we look at this from this angle, and again, for me, if I want to look at this refinery, I would have just said it should have been privatized from the word go. Let us have private investors that have the fund come and fix this. In fact, even if it is using it for the next 20 years, 25 years in terms of concession, let's have what they call build, operate, and transfer (BOT). Revamp these refineries, use them for a period of time, and then transfer back to the government, because we can't continue having this white relevant project or having a project that is taken from the economy instead of giving back to the economy. If you check the last report, in the last 4 years, NNPC have been spending billions of naira maintaining refineries that are not working, that are producing 0 barrel of fuel into the economy. So for me, it's just sheer waste of resources. And you hear these figures, and you'll be amazed if private individuals are to come into this sector and use their fund to run the so-called the refineries. Won't have this argument. If I won't be here talking, if you had heard that okay, this has been concessioned to a private sector or to a private firm, and the government will bring this counterpart fund. If this 1.5 billion, for instance, is a counterpart fund the government is bringing, and they want you to run to make sure that the refineries are working and they continue, they start working, then nobody will talk. And again, if you also look at refineries now, in the building administration, for instance, when they came in, the bidding in one of his manifesto, he said we want to spend about $7 trillion in the next 10 years on renewable energy. That is, they want to move away from oil. And we are here pumping money into where everybody is going away from. By the year 2030, in fact, oil might not be the main thing anymore, because people are moving away from petrochemical products. I mean, in terms of because of climate condition. So if you look at that, that means even this for investors, there are lots of commerce here and there. One is in form of government, the source and part of government continuity. That one is there. Another one is in form of the relevance of what we are paying the money on. We are spending your money on in the next 10 years. Oil might not be as profitable as it is right now.
Let me pick up on that with Peter. Peter, what do you think of the charge that this is little more than a white elephant project? I mean, it's not my personal belief, but it's been said that more than anything else is a white elephant project. What do you think about that particular aspect of it?
Yes, you see, most of this feeling has to do with our past. They have to do with our history, the history of not completing things, history of not doing things properly. So as a result, when anybody feels that way, they have a right to feel it, because they are looking at our history. So it is based on that history that people draw their conclusion. But again, going forward, he alluded to the fact that people are walking away from fossil fuel. Fossil fuel will still drive the world economy, maybe not 90%, but we are still going to have a share of about 50-50, maybe in another 50 years. So if you have a refinery is set up ordinarily because of the way we do things here. Our thinking about a crude oil, for example, or a refinery, for example, is petrol, kerosene, and diesel. It's more than that. A refinery is also involved in fertilizer. Most of these chemicals we are talking about, a lot of the chemicals that we use here are from Singapore. Singapore don't have a single drop of crude, but their refining capacity is one of the highest in the world. So they make sure that whatever chemicals you need, they get it. And a crude of oil has more than over 200 byproducts. So because we are lazy, and because of our laziness, so our attention is always on these three items. Dangote Refinery's fertilizer plant is going to start working by this week or next week. So what we have to look at is to look at the entire value chain. What is this refinery bringing up? That's why I told you earlier on that I'll see the glass as half rather than half empty.
Hello, is there someone else with us?
Rotating screen, yeah. Can you stand like this?
So sorry, I think there's some audio leaking from somewhere. Because I was going to pick up on that value chain and bring it to Dotun in studio here. That refurbishing the refinery is one thing, yes, but I was listening to an expert over the weekend on this matter, and the Nigerian expert was explaining. Sorry that the name escapes me right now. I saw it on television, and he had been a former managing director or chief general manager of an oil firm going back to about a decade. And he had made the point that, look, you just don't wake up a refinery just by, as it were, throwing a switch. That there's so many ancillary matters. And it was Peter mentioning the value chain that reminded me of that. The pipelines, as you know, are just virtually, they just have to be fixed. Loading stations, it's a whole chain. And when you look at the 1.5 billion, it probably also is sprinkled into all those areas. But maybe people might be thinking that, just in the Port Harcourt refinery vicinity and location, yet it could possibly be much more than that. Yeah. Would you agree that, because if it had been $400 million, maybe people would have chilled a bit. Exactly. But 1.5 billion, people just don't see how you're going to spend it. Yet these capital-intensive projects, I imagine it's easy to spend such colossal sums.
Yeah. We all know the network.
Okay.
In terms of when I say network, I mean network of and technology and so many other things involved in refinery in terms of the equipment and other things. So fine, it's capital intensive. We won't take that away from that. But recently, I think Lesotho, so one African country built a 100,000 barrel crude oil per day refinery for about $1.6 billion. And we are refurbishing one for 1.5 billion. So it leaves more to be desired. And again, government should have actually doused all this discussion if they had made a very detailed information about just like what Mr. Peter said the other time. Said there are over 200 byproducts around crude oil. So if we are okay, as we are doing this, we are building a petrochemical company around it, we are building a fertilizer around it, we are giving us information that this is how the money will be generated over time.
So government needs to be more forthcoming on this.
So let us all see the cost-benefit analysis. The benefits we are getting from it, does it outweigh the cost? Then we won't be here having this distrust discussion.
There's a caller on the line. Good morning. There's a caller on the line. Good morning, sir, in Port Harcourt. Okoro in Port Harcourt. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Thank you for calling. Go ahead, please.
I am really surprised. I don't know what Nigeria really wants. The first point is that Nigeria is in the dire need of refinery. Now, the federal government has made the bold step of giving us a refinery. Why not us concentrate on whether they will do it instead of talking about the money? Do we know how much is in the account of Nigeria? If you know how much that is in account of Nigeria, if they bring this money out, that's when you begin to talk. If this money have not been allocated to the refinery in Harcourt, do you know where it would have been? It would have been the case of say we don't have money, but the money is out. The main point I'm making is that nobody knows the total amount Nigeria has before you begin to say that this money is too much for refinery. What we should be crying, we should be begging federal government for is that as they have allocated this money to revamp that refinery, they should do it so that Nigeria will have a working refinery. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Okoro. Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Okoro from Port Harcourt. I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, on a sister station to your station here, the governor of that state was being interviewed, and the same thing we are saying, was saying that it's not about even allocating the amount of money into this. Is the actual released one. Then the fact that even when the money is released, it will be done, it will be used for the purpose of which it is being released. So what we are talking about here is the distrust that we have in the air. We have had so many instances where government will say we have spent billions of naira on this, and yet we not see any result. So if it is done, fine. Of course, we will create employment. It will create this. We will have so many. It can possibly even increase our GDP in terms of employment generation and income generation. But the major thing is that will it be done? So that's the problem we're having here. It's not about the money. Peter, will it be done? And we're going to have the same result.
Over to you. Is the glass half full? Is it half empty? That was the interesting situation you posed. And there's Okoro in Port Harcourt saying, are we sure we really know what we want? Because we complain, and now government is going along these lines. Is it too simplistic to say that government is looking to have at least our own one refinery? Yeah, the Dangote one is supposed to come on stream sometime, next year or something like that. What would you say to that sentiment, that it's not a bad thing for us to have, and that it can be done if only we knew all of the facts? Because we're curious, I guess.
From what Mr. Okoro said, I think I, to a large extent, agree with him. And you will not also take away the fact what the economist is saying from the studio. It's still based on lack of trust. Provide more information. And once you provide more information, it's easier for everybody to accept. I think we need a refinery, and I think our refinery should be fixed. And one of the, yes, the governor of River State said something, and he said, will it be done? The governor is a politician, so you don't expect the governor to support what the federal government is doing. But let's look at the economics of it. Let's look at, is it going to be done? I think I'm more optimistic that this will be done than the previous turnaround maintenance. And I read a publication that says over $25 billion have been spent, and in the last couple of years for turnaround maintenance.
Yeah.
But I didn't get a breakdown from that publication, which invariably means that it's just saying something that is in the wind. Now, $1.5 billion that we are looking at, Dangote Refinery is 600,000 barrels and it's costing about $15 billion to come on stream. Why am I looking forward to having these refineries come on stream? Is that, don't forget, when Dangote come on either towards the last quarter of this year or first quarter of next year, our importation of petroleum products will come to zero. And first advantage is that the 40% of pressures on our forest comes from importation of petrol or importation of petroleum products. So that will be zero. That will reduce less pressure. And then for those who are also afraid of monopoly, so once we have Dangote alone, 600,000 barrels, it controls the market. Tomorrow we are going to complain that yes, we don't have a monopoly. Then if this refinery, NNPC refinery come on stream and is working, then it can also help us to balance and also help us to evade a monopoly, having a monopolistic market in that direction. And what also happens if Dangote refinery has to go for maintenance, which means shutting down your refineries, are you now going to start importation? So we also need to look at the short-term, medium-term, and long-term plans.
Indeed.
I know it's difficult because of our experiences in the past for us to see anything good coming from government. That is why I use that phrase. I would rather look at the glass as half full rather than half empty. I'm cautiously optimistic that we may get this right.
Okay.
I'm also saying
one moment, please, Peter. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we have Kesandu waiting on the phone, and he's been doing so for a while. Apologies for keeping you waiting, Kesandu. Good morning, sir.
Uncle Yori, I greet you, sir. Good morning, our guest.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Kesandu Kings, like from YouTube on my LG in Imo State. You see, the truth about it is that most Nigerians are skeptical, and you don't blame their skepticism and pessimism when it comes to the issue of the current governance. Remember that the president of this country today, wrote on the mantra and mandate of is going to revive this thing and refineries every year. But it is 2015 until now. Look at what we've spent and look at what we're seeing. And today now we're getting $1.5 billion that are going to be spent on that refineries. Honestly speaking, every right-thinking Nigerian wants our refinery to work. No doubt about it. But the truth is, what is the sincerity level of Mr. President and the presidency? The truth about it remains that we want them to actualize this thing. Okay, your guest there, the economist once said, why don't we, if we're going to grab over 200 products, byproducts out of this thing, why don't we have all these little that will help us to, maybe if this byproduct comes out, somebody that can actually refine it. But what I'm saying in effect is this. Now the National Assembly has a very big role to play. The federal government has told us that the first 18 months, this is the first level. We'll get to the second level, and after 44 months, this project. Now, it is no longer business as usual for the Senate President. We don't want the Senate President to use the whims and caprices of the President as he normally does. He should be up and doing and this. So after 18 months, we'll be sure that we've gotten to this level. And Nigerians were taking this thing very seriously.
Okay.
So by 44 months, if this project fails to get completed, we're going to hold the Senate President and Mr. President responsible for the failure. We're optimistic and we want this thing to be done. But we want Mr. President to show every level of sincerity.
All right then. Well, thank you very much, Kesandu. But I wonder if it's only in Nigeria that we talk in those terms about the president. I mean, we would take the sincerity level of any president, call me a simpleton, for granted in the interest of Nigeria. In the interest of whatever country it is, in the same way as other leaders are passionate about the development of the country. I would err in that direction. I just say that, just as a personal opinion, when people bring up because Mr. Kesandu did specifically mention Mr. President. So I would just take that for granted. But perhaps the point goes back to what you are saying, that we don't know enough about it. It's a whole chain. We don't know where it's at. Did I just say that I've been watching too much American television where it's at? We don't know exactly, what the situation is. So maybe government, maybe the Minister of Information, maybe the Minister of, it's the President who's the Minister of Petroleum. They need to explain this thing to us so you can probably understand Kesandu's frustration, but still, it's a worrisome matter because everybody has the right to know.
I think there's always a trust is earned, not asked for. When this administration came, if any administration, at least to the best of my knowledge, if any administration has enjoyed a very good trust on the part of Nigerians, at the beginning, it will have been, it is this current administration, Buhari administration. The first 6 months of this administration, I hope you all remember that there was no minister of anything except the cabinet members of the government. And yet, you will see that everyone was among them. People were making excuses for the president. Oh, just leave him, he's taking his time. The body language, different kind of analysis. So that means there was so much expectation from the government. But what happened? What did we get at the end of the day? Everybody got stabbed in the back. Then this is coming. So our trust have been broken. I've been broken on so many instances. Our hope have been shattered. So people they have so much. They expect so much, and yet they are getting nothing for it. So when I say this again, of course, everybody will surely raise. It's not about the money, so to speak, as I said. It's not about the money. If the cost benefit, and if the cost is lower than the benefit, or the benefits outweigh the cost, as an economist, I know the implication of the economic implication of the refinery working, the jobs that will be created around this. But the problem there is, when they start this thing, one, will it be done on record? That is, will the 44 months be achieved? And secondly, will the money be diverted to where it should go?
Okay.
No, that won't be like Jakuta that I've been on for the past 40 years, and yet nothing is coming out of it. Okay. So that's just my worries. Well, if it's not going up, then set them off or privatize them, and let us have the refinery working. Because once Dangote starts now, there's what we call cannibalization in marketing. Once it starts, it can cannibalize any other one starts coming up, and before you know it, there will be nowhere to be found. So this is the time. The best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The next best time is now. So we'll have had all these things running for the past how many years, but and they are not working. But this is the next time to fix them. So let us fix them now by either going for privatization or build, own and transfer, or whatever concession arrangement you want to have, but not government spending directly into it. Because I've seen government as not being good in business. They are just to create environment for business to strive, not for them to go into business by themselves. I hear you. So yes. I suppose let me give the last word to Peter Sele. Peter, I suppose, following from what you've also been saying, the Nigerian public could be benefited by a much more communicative government in this regard. They actually should have foreseen this sort of hullabaloo and have, provided much more information than we actually have, so that everybody is just, making his own sense of it. Would that be fair to say that government needs to communicate a lot more about this whole matter?
Yes, I think government needs to communicate a lot more. But another thing we must also give credit to NNPC for. It's easy for us to bash and criticize. For the first time in the history, that's the current GMD of NNPC. When somebody is doing well, also commend the person, and not just all the time we abuse those in power. The current GMD of NNPC, for the first time in the history of, in the last 40 years, audited the NNPC account for Nigerians to see that, hey, we are not performing as we should do. So you see, that is what I call self-regulation, self-check. So if he's doing that, and he's the one driving this rehabilitation of the refineries, that's why I said I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll get this right. But government need to inform Nigeria, communicate how they arrive at that decision, so that, because if you look at what Nigerians are saying, they are afraid based on trust, but they are not against fixing the refineries.
I want to thank you very much, Peter. Mr. Peter Esela, former president of Pengasin. Thank you very much for making time for us this morning. And also in studio here, I want to thank you very much, Oladoto Mabinori,
thank you for having
economic
me,
analyst. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, stay with us, please. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Now, the attack on Governor Samuel Ortom, there's been a hullabaloo all over town. I have one paper in front of me here. It just sort of summarizes it. The Nigerian Governors Forum says it's an attack on governors. PDP hold federal government responsible. APC don't politicize insecurity. IG sends crack team to Benue. And Tambowal chips in, banditry is an invitation to anarchy. That really just summarizes the outrage that most feel over the attack. And we have with us Mr. Teva Akase. Mr. Akase is the Chief Press Secretary to the Governor. Good morning, Teva, and thank you very much for joining with us.
Good morning, Yuri, and thank you for having me.
Indeed. Well, so, as I said, I just read out the, different indignations coming from all over the place. By the way, how's the governor? In the light of
the governor is fine. Yesterday he went to church and give thanks and praise to God for sparing his life on Saturday. He's fine. And he's grateful to Nigerians, both home and abroad, who have sent their words of solidarity, words of goodwill, and wishing him well, wishing the state well. So he really appreciates everyone who has dared to call us and sent their words of solidarity and prayers that nothing should happen to him and any other person in the state.
Indeed. Of course, the police authorities, they're on the case trying to find out who was responsible for this attack. Even the president has weighed in on the matter. There's rage generally, but do you think this was an opportunistic attack or a targeted attack?
Well, that is for security agencies to unravel. But while they are on that, let's not forget the claim of responsibility by the Fulani nationality movement, FUNAM, that they carried out the attack, and that if not for the mix-up, for a technical hitch in their communication, they would have got Governor Ortom killed. And remember also, Yuri, that a few days ago, I think 2 weeks ago or so, the Miyetti Allah Kautahore assembled in Yola. They met, it was a large gathering of members of that organization and more and others, and they singled out Governor Ortom as their problem. They said Governor Ortom is a thorn in their flesh, that he has been leading a campaign, using their words now, against the Fulani race, and that he deserves to be treated in any way that that they can do. So with the claim of responsibility by the Fulani nationality movement now that they carried out the attacks, I wonder why security agencies should be looking further for the culprits. If you look at the Yola meeting and the statement by Funam, they said Governor Tom they called him an infidel, that he has been waging a war of hatred against the Fulani race, and so he deserves to be killed. And they said this will not be the last attack on the governor. So this has really put us into deep thoughts. What has Governor Tom done to deserve to be killed? Is it wrong to call for this century's modern, method of animal husbandry? Is it a crime for the governor to say, look, no nation in this world practices open grazing, and that Nigeria, which claims to be the giant of Africa, should embrace ranching as the best practice, global practice of animal husbandry? Is that a crime? By the way, cows that are put in a ranch produce better milk and meat. So those who have animals, this is what they should know. And this is the only thing that Governor Tom has been doing. We have Fulanis in Benue State. And in the government of Governor Samuel Otom, there are Fulanis. If you go to his farm in Bajimba, his country home, he has Fulanis who are manning, who are helping him to run some of the farms. So he does not hate the Fulani person. The thief and the Idoma Igedes have lived with Fulanis here for quite a while. So why would anyone think that Governor Tom hates Fulani? So he's waging a campaign of calumny against the Fulani race. It's not true. So we are wondering why the governor deserves to die. This is a question we're asking now, because people have claimed responsibility. So the security agencies do not need to look further for the assailants.
But as you said, the security authorities, it's up to them following their investigations to come up. But thank you for giving us the background that you did. It's an astounding situation. I mean, governors have been attacked. It never ceases to surprise. But I noticed in the details of the story on Governor Tom that he actually claimed to have to have run for up to 1 kilometer in order to escape assassination. That's a gory picture, as if the governor was being pursued. And what happened to the security details of the governor?
You see, if you have been to Benue, the axis where this thing happened is not very far from the highway between Makudi and Boko. So the terrain moving to the farm where the governor went to inspect his farm is near the river banks. That's River Benue. And so the terrain is not good enough for vehicles to access. So they had to park their vehicles off the highway and trek down to the farm. It was on their way back to where their vehicles were that the ambush took place. And we have to quickly commend the security men with the governor on that particular occasion. If not, the intervention of God and the gallantry of the security men with him, who would have been saying a different thing now. They did very well of repelling the attacks and taking the governor off danger. They had to run. This happened. Yeah. They had to run over 1 kilometer to where the vehicles were, because as I've said, accessing that farm by vehicles is not very easy, because this is the terrain that leads to the river. So you understand how the river banks usually can be. So they had to run from where they were ambushed. It took the bravery of the security men with him to exchange fire with the assailants while the governor and his aide, his PA, we're running back to safety.
Okay, one moment, please. One moment, please, because Mr. George has come on the line. Good morning, Mr. George. From Ikeja.
Good morning, Uncle Yari.
Thank you for calling in, sir. Good morning.
Uncle Yori, it's unfortunate that this has happened to the governor of Benue State. But I rejoice with him that he survived it. Be that as it may, you can see that because a governor is attacked, the Inspector General of Police has immediately come in. This is what we have been talking about in this country. Does this insecurity have to affect a VIP or a governor before the police come and do their work? Many people are being kidnapped daily. The IG is not seen making any reaction as he's doing now. Are some Nigerians more important than other Nigerians? This is a question the government has to answer. It's unfortunate it has affected the governor because this particular governor is the one that has been most outspoken about the activities of these criminals. And now they have got to a whole governor. I hope it is time for the federal government to do something about this herdsmen criminality. It is bringing us down in this country, and it is about time it should be addressed. I don't know if Uncle Yori will allow me to say something about the previous topic. I'll try to reach you, I couldn't.
Okay, very briefly, please.
We are looking for $1.5 billion to repair one refinery. This same government told us 2 months ago that the 4 refineries were being dissected. All of a sudden, 1.5 billion is now being looked for to revive only one. What is the guarantee that 1.5 billion will revive that refinery? And what is the guarantee that the money will not go into private pockets again? A refinery you have already condemned that is not repairable. All of a sudden, $1.5 billion, that's about $500 billion, is now going to be pumped into it. I think we should look for, the president should be mindful of his advisors. They are looking.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Mr. George, thank you very much. We're still with Teve Akasi, our Chief Press Secretary to the Governor. Everybody has rallied around the Governor, and are there going to have to be, I mean, this kind of a thing that has happened, I would take it for granted that there would have to be a serious review of, his security apparatus, maybe intelligence. The governor was going to go to the farm that day. Maybe, I just don't know. Now, once bitten, I imagine the governor is going to be 3, 4, 5 times shy in terms of his personal security.
Well, let me first of all share the sentiments of our friend who just called.
Mr. George.
That yes, he's right that every Nigerian deserves to be protected. And that's why we have been calling for serious reorganization. I mean, Nigeria needs to really think through, look at its security components and do more. Because if a governor can be attacked in this manner, then what happens to the rest of Nigerians, the so-called ordinary Nigerians? I mean, it can happen to anybody. And if a governor can come under fire in this way, then what happens to the rest of the people? But again, someone said yesterday that Nigeria is on a ventilator. And how can you argue against that as far as security is concerned? So we really need to do more. And intelligence gathering is one aspect of of security that our country really needs to look into. The issue of community policing is very important, and we expect that the Inspector General of Police should give this. It started under him. It's the first time Nigeria is giving a serious attention on that. So a lot more should be done. Communities are where criminals reside. If there is a forest, like where the governor was attacked, there's something like that there. Now, what has happened that our forests are not being combed by our security? The armed herders have said the forests belong to them, that they live in the forest. and that no one should tell them to leave the forest. So, and they are heavily armed. What is stopping our military, for instance, to go to the forest and chase these people out of the forest?
Okay.
And if possible, I mean,
Okay.
flush them. This is something that can be done.
Okay.
We know our forest. Nigeria knows the forest that we have. And
Okay.
the criminals are living in the forest.
Peter, I beg your pardon, not Peter, Teva. One moment, please. Mr. Yakub is on the line. Good morning, sir. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. If you are a good man, and then good morning to your guest. I totally agree with Mr. George. And then let me say this. Your guest said something that is very, very important. The community policing is the answer to all this kind of a problem we find ourselves. Before the community police, I want to know what our House of Representatives and the Senate House is doing concerning the state policing. Because if our heads want to lie to ourselves, we don't even have enough men. I'm talking about police, including military and including Navy officers and other security apparatus, to police this country. Because how many of them? But if they can be able to pass a bill whereby we have a state police. Let me give you a typical example quickly here. You remember Wakili that OPC got arrested last time in Ibarapa North. Does it mean that police they cannot be able to access the place that this guy resides? But the OPC went ahead and apprehended these guys, even though they were shot at. But because of the locality, and then they know how to do some certain things which I'm not be able to mention in the public here. So, usually, when this guy was not finally arrested, they took him to Ibadan, precisely, and then the table turned against them. So, the issue is this: if it is truly we have House of Representatives and the Senate, and then it's truly they are really representing us, they should be able to pass a bill whereby they will allow the state police. What are they afraid of? So if they are afraid of governor being using that police, okay, what is happening now? If the governor use the police as a state police, then the state citizen will cry out that the governor is not starting using this policing against us. So they should allow it. Failure to allow the state police, severely, we'll have nowhere to go. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yakub, for calling in. And Teva, this is where we're going to have to leave it. We're so thankful to God that the governor is safe. Our sympathies, but as you said, the police are investigating, and this just is totally unacceptable. NGF, the Nigeria Governors Forum, considers it.
Before I go, let me agree with our friend who just called now. That we don't need to be afraid of state police. Governors have judiciary, but states lose cases in the courts, in the state courts. So who says the police will be used only? Well, the state assembly is there, which will be a key stakeholder in manning the police, in controlling the police. So it won't be just the exclusive right of a governor to deploy police. I mean, to control and use police the way he wants. It won't happen that way. If the laws are made right, the state assembly will be fully involved in manning, in controlling and running the state police.
Indeed. I want to thank you very much, Teva. Mr. Teva Akase is the Chief Press Secretary to the Benue State Governor, Samuel Orton. Thank you indeed for your time this morning. And that brings us to the end of our program. Please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I am Yori Folani. Bye-bye for now.